we know how to duplicate and rename views and basically work with our orthogonal views, I want to show you how we can use the 3D camera. Now, when it comes to the 3D camera, there's a few things you want to keep in mind. You want to keep in mind definitely the positioning, the initial position. Within that initial positioning of your camera, you want to think about the eye level. Where is your eye going to be? So you want to compare that to maybe an average person's height. But you also want to think about the view depth or the far clip. How far am I going to see in this view from the place that I'm standing? How far into this view can I see? And we'll go ahead and set up a camera, and I'll show you how we can work with all these elements here when we get our camera set up. So when I'm working with a camera, I can either set that up in a 3D view, plan view, site view. I'm going to do it on level 1. So let's go ahead and jump to floor plan level 1 really quick. Now, I could have done this in a site view, but I like this view here because it's going with more my project north, and I'll be able to place my camera a little easier. Had I gone with the site view, it would be to the actual north. It would have been, my model would have been set up at an angle. All right, so what I want to do is take an approach that they do maybe in movies. I want to set up cameras. I want to look at it that way. It's a little bit different than I just want to look at a southwest corner. You want to think about and be strategic about the positioning. Again, the height of the camera, the perspective, and how deep you're going to look into that view, because there's going to be elements within your view, such as trees and people, that you may want to include. And there might be glazing or ways that, or areas where you can actually see through your model, and you want to be able to see things through your model. So you don't just want things to disappear. The more realistic you can get with your views using your camera, the better. All right, so what I want to do is I'm going to use some model lines to kind of set up a nice, reference area for where I want to place my views. So we're going to set up a couple of views, and I'm going to use a nice rectangle to set up 4 views. So let's go ahead and in our architecture tab, I'm going to go to model line, use my rectangle tool, and just, not very scientifically, I'm going to try to stay somewhat of a good distance away from my model. But the main thing is I want to try to keep my model centered within this rectangle here that we just drew. And again, the positioning of my cameras are going to be 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now your camera won't snap here, but this is more of a scientific approach to the placement of my camera than just bringing in a camera and just dropping it in arbitrarily. All right, so now we can go to View tab, and underneath our Create panel, we have our 3D views. I'm going to go ahead and expand this and take a look at what we have. We have 3 options: default, camera, or walkthrough. So I want to get a camera going. And again, what this will do, it'll create a really nice 3D view from the perspective of a camera placed within that view. And the keyword here is, or the 2 keywords, is perspective and camera. All right, so let's go ahead and click on that. All right, so before we place anything, let's go ahead and set up some parameters here. So our options bar is ready for us. So let's make sure we're on the correct level, level 1. And as you can see, we could set this on any level we wanted to in our project. So now you can see the importance of having those levels for more than just placing building elements. Our camera relies on this as well. Then we have our offset. Now this again can be, you can set this height whatever you want it to be. If you want to do a worm's eye view, you might want this value to be maybe a 1 or 6 inches. If you want to do an actual person's view, maybe you want to base this off of the average person's height minus maybe 6 inches. So let's change this. So if we wanted to change this, I want to change it from 5'6" to 5 feet. So there we go. My camera is offset 5 feet from the ground, assuming that that's where the average person eyes are. Now I want to make sure also that my perspective is checked. I don't want this to be an orthogonal view. I want that cinematic effect and that drama that a perspective view gives you, and that sense of realism. So I want to make sure that's selected. So now I can go ahead and place my camera. And again, our strategy is 1, 2, 3, 4 corners, right? So let's start here. So again, it's not going to snap, but this is a little more scientific than just dropping it in. So I'm going to, first click will be my position. Second movement I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag this out. And you can see these blue lines. Anything within these lines is going to be visible in my model. So the top angle and the bottom angled lines, not the middle, but the top, anything that's excluded out of my model won't be seen in anything that's excluded outside of those 2 lines won't be seen in our model. So you want to make sure that you include everything within your model here. Also, how far you drag this out is going to determine what's visible within your model in the distance, right? We talked a little bit about being able to see things through the glazing or being able to see background elements. Well, this is going to determine that as well. So I'm going to go ahead and click that and take a look at what we have here. We have a pretty cool looking view. So I'm going to go ahead and stretch this out. And this will allow me to adjust the window for my view. So if I have a certain amount of ground I want visible, I can decrease that. If I have a certain amount of area that I want visible here, I can have. And if I know I'm going to have a certain amount of sky that I want visible, I can certainly make those adjustments as well. And this will take care of our first view. Now I can change those visual styles to be maybe realistic. To get a better idea of how it's going to look, I can go to consistent color. All of them will work. I can turn on my shadows as well. So pretty good, right? Pretty nice. But we'll have to come back a little bit later and get rid of any elements in here that we don't want to have visible. But so basically set up our first view. So now what happened is when we dropped in that camera, and it automatically brought in our view into here. So now I'm going to right click here and I'm going to give this a new name. So I'm going to rename this one. So this one we can give a name. I believe this will be our, we'll double check the view here. So say northwest. Yeah, that'll be our northwest view. So I'm going to right click it. I'm going to say rename. We'll say northwest. And instead of ortho, I might say perspective. Northwest perspective. Right, so there we go. Create a nice 3D view, and you can see the view you get here is pretty dramatic. We get a nice perspective here. Nothing is exactly parallel. It's not how our eye sees it. So it's a really nice way to kind of get a camera set up. And that's basically how you get a camera, access your camera. You place it into your project, and you duplicate, well, not actually duplicate, but you rename that view. So in the next video, we're going to talk about working with some site elements and making some additional adjustments to this view so that we can get the desired scene that we want.